Hello. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Yesterday, so we're in South Bend, Indiana, if this is the first time that you've joined us. And yesterday we had a snowstorm here, but today the sun is out and I think it's like 50 degrees. So that
Is it 50 yet? Still feels
does
cold.
it. I haven't been out in a couple of hours. So
It's like when you get used to like 80 degrees after a
I know.
week, it's like
Yeah, yesterday I was
yes,
cold all day long, like beginning
so
to end. Yeah,
cold.
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what it
Uh,
was. It's like colder than the entirety of winter.
Yes, yes, for sure. So if you don't know us yet, thank you for being here. First of all, if this is your first webinar that you've attended, we tend to be a little bit casual in these, and really we love to engage with our audience. So please say hello, and any questions that you have, of course, please ask. I'm just gonna get my slide deck going here. All right, cool. So today we're really, really excited about this content. Matt and I have developed a little bit of a little bit of a system in order to help you as a user um, understand which things to tackle first. We know that just like in our business, just like in my job specifically, there are always way more things to do than you can actually get done. And our goal is to be able to give you as much direction as we can on which things you should address first, which are super important, and which things you can kind of let fall to the wayside or maybe hand off to someone else. And of course, it's going to differ like sometimes moment by moment, right? Because when we're in this business, it can be impossible to keep up with all of this stuff. But hopefully, this going through some of these scenarios and helping you kind of understand how to best prioritize your to-do list, it will make you a more effective worker in your day to day. And I really think a lot of these things are applicable not just to Listing Mirror, but also to just owning an e-commerce business. And just from our experience, what we've seen in working with hundreds and hundreds of sellers, kind of what we have learned, and we're always continuing to learn as well. So, to run through our agenda really quickly, we will just start just by introing ourselves, and then we will jump right into strategizing your to-do list. We've created a color-coded priorities, and we will make sure to pass these slides off to you after the event so that you have these at your disposal if you kind of want to refer back to them. We would love to know if you do decide to do that. I really hope that these are effective for you and useful. And then we'll talk through some examples of strategic work. So what does it look like to kind of make those decisions that are needed in order to best prioritize things in a day-to-day or moment-to-moment cycle. And then we will wrap up by talking about how can we do things in advance to prevent these fires. And initially, my thought was to do this format well, I'll talk about that in a second, actually. Let's keep moving here. So Matt and I are your hosts today, like we mentioned. And Matt, if you just want to intro yourself and kind of talk a little bit about what you do here, that'd be cool.
Yeah, totally. Hey, y'all. I am Matt. I'm the senior tech support specialist here at Listomere. I've been here for like 5 years almost.
Yeah.
If you ever submitted a support ticket or set up a phone call, you've most likely have had a conversation with me. I do a lot of the day-to-day in and outs, and then same with these webinars as well.
Yeah, Matt is an incredible resource. So if you do have any specific questions that you're not getting a good answer on for one reason or another, this is what our Q&A time will be for toward the end of our session today. So we would love to give you a hand with that. And I'm Erin, a co-founder and COO here at Listing Mirror. I love doing these webinars among a myriad of other things. If you haven't interacted with me yet, I would be surprised, but that probably means you didn't need a sales call, you didn't need any training, and you're generally satisfied with the software, or maybe you're not using it yet. Otherwise, you probably interacted with me. So either Matt or myself, and we love working with you as sellers. We love to kind of understand the ins and outs of what makes your experience in Listing Me good, and also kind of understanding how we can better serve you over time. And so, thank you for all of the input that you give us, and we're hoping for more of that today. So, that was a lovely segue that I just made for myself. So, webinars are made
Smart move,
better
though.
with your interactions. So, we do hope that you'll talk to each other, say hello, and also talk to us throughout the webinar, whether it's about the content we're covering, or, like I said, if there's other specific questions that you have that you want us to address in the Q&A, we're happy to do that as well. Okay, so let's jump right into this color-coded priorities that we made. This is where I'll go back to what I was going to say on the agenda slide and tell you that we originally were thinking to do a smoke, smolder, fire. And because it's not as if these low, it's not as if the yellow items are not important. Everything could end up in a fire, right? Like, all of these things could escalate. So what we want to do is we want to prevent things from escalating, and then we want to know how to handle the things that have already escalated. Maybe things feel completely out of your control right now, and how can we get to a place where things are more in your control and there are less or zero high things. Mostly we're just dealing with moderate and low things, right? So I know that there is this something I talk to my team about a lot, is this idea that, it's really important for us to always be talking positively about the things that, about how you're doing things in Listing Mirror, and also about how you, or the assistance that we're giving, and how to manage everything. We want to be positive. We do believe that you can succeed, and so I want that to be reflected, and I know that that's something that's important to you guys as sellers. But the honest truth is, stuff goes wrong sometimes, and that's what the majority of our work with you actually is how to work through these things that are happening that are not great. And so that's kind of where this whole idea came from. And we'll see, maybe this will kind of like trickle into the type of support that we give as well. That was a thought I just had, but it'd be cool. Okay, so let's first go into the high things, because these are most important. And these are the things that are, let's just go back to the slide real quick. These are the things that guarantee negative consequences to your selling record, to your metrics on the channels that you're working on. It is incorrect to think that connecting to a third-party software of any kind will just work. I don't know if anyone here has thought that before, but I do know that that is something that people have thought about Listing Mirror, but about all different types of softwares, that you just connect it and it just works. And the truth is that there's always going to be some work involved, and you just shouldn't assume that. And you especially want to avoid things that are going to result in negative consequences on your selling account.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one we're going to talk about is overselling. Matt, you want to take a few of these slides here? I know we didn't really
Yeah,
separate them
totally.
ahead of time.
Yeah, I know we did. I know. Yeah, classic. Yep, overselling. So, as it implies, you're selling inventory that you do not have. And there are a few reasons why that would happen. So a couple of them we'll go over. The selling channels disconnected from Listed Mirror. So Listing Mirror is not talking to your channel. We're not sending inventory. We're not even importing the orders, not syncing data, nothing. So that kind of a disruption to your service could lead to overselling. Because if the other marketplaces are still enabled and we're still syncing quantity and things are still selling, but this random marketplace is disabled, we are not going to send inventory updates. So when your inventory drops to zero, that disabled marketplace is going to continue selling that item. So it's always very important to find those immediately. Duplicate listings exist. So this is another thing. I think it's most prominent on eBay, if I had to take a marketplace in specific. These are when you have two of the exact same listing existing on eBay. Listing Mirror is only connected to one of them. So whether that's you created outside of Listomir, or there was some kind of API error when we created the listing and eBay told us one thing but another thing happened, these can lead to overselling because Listomir, while we sync quantity to the one we're connected to, we're not going to sync quantity to the one we're not. So that one's just going to live there, exist, hold its own inventory, and will sell eventually. And you will definitely oversell. And then, of course, the last one, incorrect inventory levels. So just pretty generic, like your inventories your inventory levels in Listmeter are just not correct what they actually are. So that, for example, I just brain farted. What was that example that we talked about? Canceling
Oh,
orders
right,
outside
right,
of
right. Yeah.
marketplaces. This is a pretty classic thing. That's not always obvious. Is when a order is canceled on the marketplace, Listimer will add that canceled quantity back to your inventory. So if you oversell on an item and you're like, I got to cancel this order, and you cancel on the marketplace, Listimer sees it, we import it, and then we bump it up by one. So in that just kind of creates a cycle of like it'll just constantly oversell. So that's something to look out for. If you're canceling orders on the marketplace, whether it's you or the buyer or the marketplace itself, Listimer will add that inventory back. So a good thing to keep eye out. If you ever have a canceled inventory, check Listimer, check the SKU's inventory just to make sure everything's kosher.
Cool.
Failing to ship on time. So this is another big thing that all marketplaces will ding you. Not even usually, always, you are sending a lead time on the marketplace. Lead time to ship. It's got a bunch of different names. But this is you telling the marketplace, hey, I'm going to get the item, the product the buyer just bought to the post office or whatever tracking at this X amount of days. And there are a couple things where, like, for example, the lead times is not correct in Listimer. So like Listimer will set your lead times for your marketplaces. So I think Amazon is one of the more that this gets tripped
Yeah.
up on, because other marketplaces are full data sync. We control everything. It makes sense that we would also control lead time. But for Amazon, the Amazon lead time is one of the fields we will control in addition to quantity and price, if price is enabled. But yeah, so incorrect lead times. I've worked with a number of clients that just didn't realize Listomir was setting the lead time. They had a lead time of 1 in Listomir, and then they assumed that they had a lead time of 3, so they're not shipping quick enough, and then Amazon will ding them. So it's important to make sure that Listomir is setting your lead times correctly to what you need, to what you should be filling.
And just to clarify on
The
that one too, the reason why we have to send the lead time is it just happens to be a part of the feed that we have to send to Amazon in order to sync your, I believe it's quantity. So that is why it is set in Listing Mirror. It is not an option to shut that off. And also, just in case it wasn't abundantly clear, that is only referring to your merchant fulfilled inventory. Obviously, your FBA
yes,
orders and your MCF orders, that is completely separate. So this is just your merchant fulfilled inventory lead time for Amazon. But then there are every single marketplace has different ways that lead time is set up. eBay is one that
oh
can
yeah,
get quite confusing. So making sure that you know what your lead times are on your live listings is really, really important. I'm not saying you have to look at every single listing, but like just spot check and
you should know.
make sure
Yeah,
that what you
definitely.
assume is what is actually on the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then speaking of eBay with like lead times, so there could be trolls lead time. So for example, when we send an MTF off to Amazon, we send them a ship date. So we're tell Amazon, hey, get the order to the client at this date. We don't tell them a lead time. So like say for example in eBay, you're like, I have a lead time of 2, and then you're using standard shipping, so it's 5 to 7 days. And Amazon, you MCF the order off to Amazon. Amazon doesn't know really care when your lead time is. They just know, hey, we need to get it by this day, so that's in 7 days. So they have a ton of warehouses everywhere, so it's very likely that they're able to ship the item and get it to the client in 2, or the buyer in 2 days. So they might not ship it for 5 days. Like they'll hold on to it. Like, no, we don't need it. Like we'll be able to get there in 2 days. There's no reason to ship it out earlier. So they'll wait 5 days, and that's gonna, if you have a lead time of 3 set, that's 2 extra days. That's just it's going to be sitting there. Then you might get an email from the buyer, and then dinged on your eBay account, that kind of thing. It's definitely a common practice. A lot of clients will counteract that by just using a quicker shipping time on MCF. Like for example, they'll just always send everything expedited. So when it goes off to Amazon, it's just the fastest it's going to happen. So they get it out quick enough, and it's going to meet your lead time. Or another option would be to on eBay set your lead time to 5 to 6 days. So Amazon, no matter how long they wait to ship it, they're not going to bust over your lead time.
Right. So this
And
this is all about making sure that the marketplaces are communicating what's actually happening, right? So it's simply just
Yep.
making sure that the settings you have on eBay or on Etsy or I mean Shopify is probably one where you wouldn't experience the selling metrics issue.
Oh, no.
Um, but
Right.
but in
Right.
any
Yeah.
case, buyers want to know when their stuff is coming, right? And so you want to make sure that you're communicating something that's accurate. And if you just because, and I remember this happening a lot when Listing Mirror was a lot younger, let's say like a year old, there was, people would set up their shipping speeds for eBay and they would assume then that meant that the shipping speeds were set up for Amazon. But that isn't true. The marketplaces have to
Yep.
communicate with each other and that doesn't happen automatically. And so we just have to make sure that the settings that you have on eBay are a reflection of the settings that you have on your Amazon account. And a lot of that's controlled through Listing Mirror. If all of that sounded very confusing, Matt is really good at that stuff. And he can absolutely help you make sure that it's all correct, even if you just want him to like double check something. Or if you know that you need something very specific and you aren't sure how to set it up, he's a great resource for that.
It's very true. I've done it a lot. And I guess the last one would be the lack of attention. So this is just more generic. We definitely recommend to our clients to just log in and use Listing Mirror daily, even if it's not you don't have to spend hours and hours each day, but just like log in, check your orders page, just to make sure everything's going. We've recently revamped our orders page, so it's nice, pretty statuses, and we got several tabs that you can just flip over to and just look at the orders you're wanting to look at and just make sure everything's flowing and shipping smoothly, because that's a huge part of your metrics, and it is something you should always be aware of.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Duplicate listings exist for the same item. So in similar, and these
kind
all
of go
kind of work
together,
together, and they can kind of cause each other, and they affect each other, right? Because duplicate listings, like we were talking earlier, for overselling, yeah, I mean that's definitely, yeah, duplicate listings existing is usually not a great thing, especially for eBay. eBay hates it, and they will dig you, and they won't. They're not. Yeah, you don't want it for eBay. So selling channels disconnected from Listing Mirror. So I don't duplicate selling channels disconnect from Listing Mirror. I forgot our reasoning for this one being.
I think it was mostly just that it would just be like if a channel is disabled, that listings could exist outside of Listing Mirror.
Yes.
Um,
Yep. Especially if you have a particular workflow, not necessarily made for eBay, but for another marketplace where we are importing listings from your marketplace, such as like WooCommerce, where we lack the ability to create listings, or for example, Amazon, we won't import listings.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's generally not great. And you always want to have an enabled integration, assuming you want Listmere doing stuff with that integration.
Right. Because we may catch a duplicate listing, if the marketplace is connected to Listing Mirror, but we can't. There's nothing that we can do if it's disconnected for a period of time. And the second one, we experience this a lot where, if you have, let's say, 5 users set up in your Listing Mirror account, and there are people on your team who just have a different workflow and are not, either they're not using Listing Mirror, or they just, maybe they don't have proper Listing Mirror training. And again, like this isn't necessarily just a Listing Mirror thing either. This can totally apply to any workflows that you have set up for your business. If your whole team isn't doing things in the way that you've set up, then the chances of duplicate listings being created is pretty high. Just miscommunications and things like that. So make sure that you have really clear instructions for your team on how to create the listings, and then also If they do get created, we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit.
Hmm.
Making sure that you're just taking time as a manager to go through and assess if there are any duplicate listings that have been created that need to be addressed, either just deleted or address them from a managerial standpoint. And I thought of another
Yeah,
reason.
and
Go for it, Matt.
I've definitely worked with clients setting up workflows for their team, because if
Hmm.
you have like a larger team of like 4 or 5, maybe like several people, it can be hard to coordinate everything and make sure everyone's doing the exact same thing. So I've definitely worked with clients too, like, all right, this is how you do it for this marketplace, this is how you do it for this, et cetera, and they would write everything down and just make sure to pass it
Hmm.
along. Having nice, clear, concise construction instructions is super useful for your
Yeah, yeah.
employees.
And this probably a good thing to mention too is we're always happy to either send a video over of what we're suggesting you do, um, or set up a training call where we can talk through this stuff with your team, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. That's often helpful as well. The last thing I thought of that we did not add to the slide, but I will before I send it out to you guys, is if your listings are not linked together. So that is to say, you're selling the same product, but it's listed under different SKUs on different channels.
Oh yeah.
What can
Hmm.
happen sometimes
Oh,
is if you don't remember that that listing already existed, let's say, let's talk about eBay. You have the product on eBay already, but it's listed under a different SKU than the one that it's listed under on Amazon. And you just go through and say create all these listings on eBay, and in the process, you miss the fact that your listings are not connected to the that your two marketplace listings are not connected to the same product and listing mirror. So this is
Yeah,
probably like a
different
listing
products.
mirror only issue. But the consequences, then you end up with two listings on the marketplace for the same thing, and especially if you don't realize that's what happened. I mean, I know some people, some businesses choose
Yeah.
to create duplicate listings, and you have your own reasons for that. But if you don't mean to do it and you aren't aware of the consequences, or you don't want the consequences, then chances are that is when you're going to have a problem. So making sure that
Hmm. Yep.
your account is set up correctly, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the line. Okay, and then you want to just go over this one, Matt? Then we'll go into.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a quickie. So disabled integration. So like how we talked earlier, having an integration disabled should be like one of your top priorities of fixing. Like if it's disabled, gosh, you should fix it immediately, because we're not syncing inventory, we're not syncing listing data, we're not importing orders. And so it's dead, right? Dead in the water. I ain't doing nothing with it. So it is very important. And Listener will notify you. You'll get an email, and you'll see it in your notification center
Yep.
as well. That like, hey, integration A was disabled for blah blah blah. Almost always it's just you just need to refresh credentials, which I can show you guys later how to do, or where to do it rather. But yep, just need to refresh creds. Like we got bad tokens, things need to you need to constantly change up. I think it's like once a year,
Hmm.
off the top of my head, that you just need to refresh
Yeah, and
credentials.
there are other reasons why credentials become inactive as well. So it could be that you added another software to your portfolio, and so you had to create a new token, and that was the
Yeah,
listing mirror one.
totally.
So then you have to like make sure that you copy it and add it over. So that can happen sometimes.
Hmm.
Again, this can happen with larger teams that are trying to do really big things, and certain people don't know the consequences of whatever they're doing to the other parts of your business. And this happens at Listing Mirror too, so I 100% get it. Um, so just so many moving parts, right?
That was a lot.
So make
Turns
sure
out.
that
Yeah.
your
So
integrations are enabled and that your credentials are um, good, healthy.
yep. So like just like yeah, so just like in review for like some of the higher things you should be focusing on would be, if something's overselling, look into it immediately. And if it doesn't make sense, like we have an inventory history page, and that's a great place to start troubleshooting for reasons why things oversell. But if it doesn't make sense, contact us, let us know. The Failing to ship on time. So if an order is not shipping on time, look into it immediately. Grab our help if you need it. the duplicate listings existing. So if you're finding listing like, hey, I see this listing twice on eBay, like deal with it immediately. Nuke that one that you don't need, or talk to us if it doesn't make sense and you're just wondering why it happened. Sometimes we can tell, sometimes we can't. And then the last is disabled integrations. So if you see an integration disabled, get on it immediately.
Mhm.
Act, refresh credentials. If that doesn't work, if you're still hitting errors, let us know immediately. We'll help you out. It's usually they're figure outable.
Yeah, for sure.
Words.
Uh, okay, so these necklines that we're going to go through are faster. We have condensed the information into one slide per color. So we wanted to make sure that we spent enough time on those super high priority things. We'll kind of zip through these next ones a little bit more quickly, and then we'll move into some scenario work. So I'll go through these orange ones. So these are moderate, and the reason why we have, I guess, tagged them as such is because these are things that we know are preventing you from selling. So they do need to be fixed, but they aren't going to have they won't necessarily have negative consequences on your
Yeah.
selling metrics. It's just you need to change these things if you want to grow. So
Yep.
first one is quantity on hand is not reflected on the marketplace. So this can happen for a variety of reasons. One reason would just be that when you first started using Listing Mirror and we imported your available quantity, it was wrong from the get-go. And maybe you just didn't know to go into Listing Mirror and make sure that that was updated prior to going live on the marketplace. This can also happen if there are duplicate listings for a product. What are other reasons why this can happen? I feel like there's a lot of them. It's just, if you have something in stock and we aren't sending that quantity to the marketplace, and so it shows it as out of stock, like that's obviously something we want to fix. So making
Yep.
sure, like obviously the solution for that would be making sure that the quantities that you have in Listing Mirror are correct. And then the second part of it would just be making sure that your inventory sources are enabled. And we'll look at some of this in a few minutes as well. Okay, second thing is unresolved errors. So there are kind of like two categories I think I'll mention here. The first one is incomplete listings. Actually, that's on the next line. Okay,
Guess it
cool.
has its own little
So let's
bullet
just talk about
point.
errors then.
Wow.
So errors are they are going to really focus on things that are preventing the listing from like really from selling. It depends on the marketplace. Sometimes errors mean that
It
it's
does.
not published at all. You can see inside of Listing Mirror if something is published or unpublished. We show you that. So you can kind of
Yep.
understand from that if it's something that you need to fix right away or if it's okay. I always recommend fixing errors though because of there's just so much going on. You guys know how it is.
Who wants to look at
Yeah.
errors all day? Yeah.
So
Fix those
fixing errors
baddies.
is a really good idea. Errors can be things like like you need another field filled out, or
Missing
yeah,
fields, you know.
things like that. Maybe the category changed, or yeah, sometimes weird things happen.
eBay's pretty
So
famous
even
for that,
for
right? Like eBay will retire
yes,
them.
retiring categories. So even for the marketplaces that you like that your listings have been fine for, let's say 2 years, it's
Yes.
always worth just running through and just keeping an eye on things, because you never know when the requirements for the listing on the marketplace may have changed and suddenly it's not syncing properly anymore, which would prevent us from syncing quantity properly, or it could prevent us from syncing quantity properly.
Yep.
And okay, then the next line, incomplete listing fields. So this is really an instance where all of these listings are not published. So you push the create button, you tell Listing Mirror, create a listing for this channel. So we try, but there's some fields that we don't have data for. So we could not fill them out. And then the product, or the listing just sits inside of Listing Mirror in kind of like draft status, and we cannot create it on the marketplace. So this would be a case where you need to come into Listing Mirror, you need to look at what information is missing, and then add in the missing fields. The last thing is bad pricing. So what I mean by this is if you have your pricing set up for Amazon in a specific way, maybe you have a repricer set up there or whatnot, but then the workflow that you have inside of Listing Mirror does not reflect those updated prices to the other marketplaces. It could mean that in 6 months, the price that you have on the bracelets that you're selling is, $7 higher than what you have it for on Amazon or something like that, just depending. It could also mean that it's like a totally off the wall price, right? Like maybe you button smashed and you didn't even realize it, and now the listing is showing for like $5,000 for something that cost, that you want to be selling for 20 or something. So this is another thing to just kind of like keep an eye on. Make sure that the way that you have um, your pricing syncing structured is what you think you have set up.
Oh yeah.
um, and
Hmm.
I guess another way that this could happen is if you have some people on your team that are managing pricing directly on the marketplace and not in Listing Mirror, we will
Yep.
overwrite those prices. So
That
there are all
happens.
kinds of reasons why this could happen. Mostly, I just want you to focus on what are things that you need to be looking at that might be preventing you from getting the sales that you want for your business. Okay, and let's then jump into the low priorities. So these are things that we believe slow your growth, and they are things that fail to target your buyers effectively. Um, and this is kind of another thing that I think actually probably a lot of this happens just because there is a little bit of misunderstanding about what needs to be done, like what work needs to be done. And then also, I think that it's not abnormal for I guess loud voices in the space to say you just need to be on all channels, just sell your stuff on all the channels that you can, and not really thinking through the consequences of that. So we also, in addition to selling on all channels, we also need you also need your listing data to reflect what the marketplace wants. So you understand Amazon really well, probably. Making sure you understand all the other marketplaces that you want to sell on and that you know how to make good listings for those channels. You can hire people to do this. You can learn it yourself. You can, go to webinars for the different marketplaces.
Hmm.
There are tons of resources out there. So these are all things related to that, basically. So it's poor listing data. It's just, you know,
Sad.
this could be anything from bad pricing to bad, I don't know, like just, yeah,
Title.
like a title that's too long. Yeah.
Description.
It
Yeah.
could be anything,
Title's cut
especially,
off.
yes, because especially if you are selling, if the products that you are selling are not listings that you have built, and then you just assume that they're fine, and you don't look at them. Like, I feel like that's like the lack of attention thing is probably really big
Hmm.
in this category. Just assuming that everything is fine and not really realizing, oh, the description here is lorem ipsum or whatever. So making sure that your listing
Hmm.
data is
Yep.
good is really important. And then also customizing your data between marketplaces. So if you fail to do this and the listing just looks exactly like it does on Amazon, and you haven't put any effort into, making sure that your titles make sense for Shopify or make sense for Walmart or whatever, um, that is also something that you should fix. um,
You
you
should
should
probably
probably work
fix
on
it.
this. Next thing is lack of or poorly optimized images. So Listing Mirror does its best to uh, populate the images to the channel in the format that is needed for that marketplace. So we don't just throw your images up there and make you figure out what that means and how you're supposed to deal with it. At the same time, um, you yeah,
Stuff.
there are of course differences in the way that images look, just depending on a bazillion different factors, and it is really important for you to understand what those are, and also to check to make sure that on the marketplace the listings look or sorry, the images look like you think they look, right? um Making changes listing by listing instead of in bulk. So this is more just like it's just taking a really long time to get any work done. So we always recommend using our templates for working on lots of listings at once, and also making sure that you are using category mapping, which we'll talk about a little bit in a little bit as well. And the last one would just be SEO work. So of course, making sure that your listings are visible to your buyers is super duper important, and employing um,
Hmm.
people to work on your listings and make sure that they're optimized for the marketplace and optimized for searching is super important as well. So those are the things that we would recommend you work on um, over time as the other larger fires calm down. All right, let's
Hmm.
see here. We have a question about color coding. Does listing mirror color code priorities on the new send to Amazon prep category for prior to shipping to Amazon?
Not quite sure what that
Yeah, Scott, if you can
means.
just like add a few more details about just like a little bit more context, just so I can understand
Send to Amazon.
what problem you're having or what solution you're looking for, I would be happy to address it. I would love to understand how I can address this for you. All right, so we're going to run through a few sample scenarios. We'll keep this pretty short and sweet. I think,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
nothing
nothing
crazy.
crazy, and I think also just being mindful of the time and our audience size. I just want to make sure that we're not wasting anyone's time.
Waste the
All
time.
right, you want to share your
Yoink,
screen?
Sharon.
All right,
Yep.
cool.
Hmm. So I'll go the first one because some of the things are a little hard to sell without a live account, but there is one I can show with the integrations. Let me zoom in a little bit because I'm always zoomed out. Is my screen dark or is that just the screen
It's just a
sharing
screen
in
sharing. Yeah,
Demio?
it looks proper.
Just make sure. Okay. So say you have disabled integration, you would go to you would see it here in this notification center. List will notify you like, hey, the integration is not working. And from there you go to manage integrations at the top, and you just takes you to the manage integrations page, of course. And you can see here, I got a Shopify and a BigCommerce integration that are disabled. You can tell that by this, large disabled icon right here. So if you wanted to, if you need to refresh them, which is usually the case, you'd click this right here, and it would take you through the steps. And they're different for each marketplace, so it'll look a little different. I think eBay just logs in your eBay account. Shopify, you need to put in some information, that kind of thing. And that is where you would do that here. Very important to do. I highly recommend it. If you see a disabled integration, fix that immediately. That's definitely one of the big things. For a little bit of just being more efficient with your listing creation, taking into account category mapping, for example, and just making sure your product listings are set up correctly. So for this example, I got a green shirt with this following SKU. I'm going to create it on eBay and show you what that looks like. So bam, click the button, pending. I go into the edit listing page, and I already know that this is going to fail because it is. I think it. Oh, it is. Yeah,
Wow, go listing
yeah.
mirror.
It's already got. It's already got. It's already
But
got
it doesn't have the
the.
department,
Did I?
so it will still fail.
Right, and you'll see like eBay is definitely, I think, more so than other marketplaces, has a lot of category specific fields. These are fields that differ based on each category. They let they sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It does depend on the
Yeah.
category, and what list or what eBay at the time is requiring. So for this instance, I can see that it filled out blue, medium. Oh, why did it even get those ones? Let me double check. I thought I had not mapped the category on this listing, so let me double check. Oh, it didn't, but there's a default setup doing it. So this is why category mapping is
Yeah,
super
let's go into
important.
that.
Because even though this product listing does not have a category assigned, a category was still created on eBay. See, there's no category selected here. Category still selected on eBay. Right here. So this is your category mapping. It depends on how many products you have and what a variety of products you have. It will depend on how big this list is. If you only sell men's t-shirts, you're going to have like one category mapping. Very easy to do. Super quick. If you have a wide variety, like you're a reseller and you just you sell across a wide variety of things, you'll have a lot of things to map. But we recommend doing this earlier rather than later, because you are going to have to assign category. The marketplace is always going to require it. And you'll see each integration, as long as that integration has categories, things like Shopify and BigCommerce, since they are your own store and it's not really a marketplace, they don't have set categories. So those kind of things don't apply to there. There are ways to automate category mapping. If you ever have questions, holler at us. I don't really have time to go into it now, but you can do some nice rule creation to make that a little quicker in Shopify and in
And I always
Listomere.
recommend
But
setting up a
so
default category if you do sell anything similar to each other, just so the listing can like
yes.
at least try to get live. I feel like it is an important thing to do. Just create the default, which basically just says if no category exists, which one do I want to
Hmm.
throw it into? So
Yep. And in this particular demo account, I got a bunch of men's t-shirts, so I'm just gonna go with that. Shirts, t-shirts, and it just goes down the line. It's like you're selecting a category, like if you were on the market listings page itself. But the difference is that is set forever. So whenever whenever the product listing category, which we based our product categories off Amazon, because the Amazon category has a massive catalog of categories. So whenever Amazon or whatever the product category is this here, we'll create this category on eBay. And same for the default. This will be the default. So when everything's created, and if a product listing doesn't have a category set, it'll use that. This can be it can be a little tedious depending on how many categories you have. We don't have a bulk way to do it, but I mean it's definitely worth it in the long run. Like industrial science lab. Oh. Where would this go? Business and industrial. And some of these can be a little tricky. You're not always going to get a one-to-one. Sometimes it's just going to be like kind of a close enough scenario, especially for like Walmart. It doesn't have they don't do very specific categories. They're very broad.
mhm.
And so when we send them to Walmart, it's a broad category, clothing, and their team selects, okay, you're sending a men's t-shirt, so we'll narrow that down and we'll put it in the men's t-shirt category. Things like eBay and Etsy, it's a set category. So like if you have category A set in Listing Mirror for eBay, we're going to create category A on eBay. Glassware. Ooh, this is toughy.
Well, we don't have to necessarily go all the way to the bottom in this. The other thing I was going to mention is
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, like let's say 90% sure, that you can find for eBay specifically, you can find the category codes just Google it and use those codes to update your listings in a spreadsheet. So
they do have that.
if you want to do it that way because it would be faster than mapping, you can also do it that way. There's a lot of details that
Yeah,
were
and use the category number, not
yes,
the
use the
name.
number.
That applies to all marketplaces. Like use the ID number of the
Mhm.
category, not the name itself, because that won't work.
Right, right. Let's talk through. So that was a good idea of kind of how we just kind of had to shift really quickly, right? Because we saw, oh, a category was created. Why was it created? Okay, then going to category mapping. So for the most part, on one thing that we wanted to show you that we won't be able to show you, but we can talk through is a duplicate listing. So Matt, can you just bring up that duplicate listing page just so our viewers can
Yeah.
know how to navigate to it?
Click the reports at the top and then go to eBay duplicate
So
listings.
eBay is a marketplace that duplicate listings happen on more frequently than other marketplaces for one reason or another. Also, probably the reason why we spend an extra amount of effort talking about eBay in relation to
Yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
because um, with eBay, it's fairly easy to get your listings live, but then there are lots of reasons why your listing might get taken down and a lot of reasons why your metrics might be affected. Where on
Hmm.
Walmart, which is our other probably like biggest marketplace, chances are your listing will not go live until things are how they need to be because it's a struggle
Yep.
to get your listings live. And so that's probably why we're talking a little bit more about eBay today. But for that duplicate page that Matt just brought up, um, that is where we will show you, hey, we're pretty sure that these are both the same listing, even though even though you have them both listed. So you can either ignore it
Hmm.
or you can delete one of them. I think those are kind of the two options. So this is a
Yes.
great page to
Yep.
keep an eye on. It is a newer page that that we created and um, and we know that it's been super helpful for people just to identify, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize I actually have some, another connection, and
Hmm.
maybe like another third party is connected to my eBay marketplace and they're creating listings and I had no idea, right? So sometimes that happens.
Yeah, that's definitely a
Yep.
thing. Yep.
Okay, and then I think that's good for now, Matt. But maybe we will just
Yeah.
let's keep your screen up. What we're going to talk through next
Hmm.
is how to prevent things from happening. And I will make sure that I go back to the slide deck in a minute. But I think because we're already on Matt's screen, let's just go over a few of these prevention tactics. So, the majority of what we were previously talking about is you're in the thick of it already, right? You already have your account created, you're already working in Listing Mirror, and you just need to triage, right? You just need to like figure out all the things that are going on, decide which ones need to be done first, second, third, and move forward. Now we're going to talk about how can you make sure that the things that you do at the beginning of adding a new selling channel are mitigating these issues that might pop up in the future. So we have 4 different things. And the first one is linking listings, which I talked about earlier. Matt can navigate us to the linking listings page, I guess.
Let me close off
So
this.
let me explain what this does. So linking a listing basically tells Listing Mirror, hey, this product is actually the same. Sorry, this SKU is actually the same as this other SKU that we have. And the only way that you can link products is to not have that SKU on both marketplaces, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yep. And I was going to use and I was going to use these two
Okay,
as
go for it.
example, and kind of ignore the fact that they aren't the same. But let's say they are the same, and you just like your SKU varies. Like your eBay has a dash E at the end of the what you had an Amazon SKU originally. So like when Listing Mirror imports and we look for, hey, does this SKU exist? We're keying off SKU. We don't key off title or images or description or anything else. We're looking purely at SKU. So like Listing Mirror is not clever enough to realize that the two listings are the same, even though they have same title and images and stuff like that, because we're specifically looking at
Mhm.
SKU. So say you got these into Listing Mirror. So these are 2 different product listings. So if you're going through and you're just like creating in general on eBay, if you just click plus, you're going to create another of that eBay listing without even realizing it, if you're not really paying attention and just kind of clicking plus a bunch. So we want to link these 2 listings so they share inventory. They'll connect it to the same product listing, that kind of deal. I will merge them into this particular right here. So I need to grab this SKU. Go to the product listing page. Up at the top, there's an action drop-down menu. Click link market listings. So we're going to link that eBay listing to the Amazon listing that's connected to this one. Hey, there it is. So this is the destination. So this is the LM SKU that's going to be retained. This is the one that's going into that one. Click link listing. Bam, that's
Mhm.
done. It took me to this weird category mapping page. Boom, back to there. So now you can see, boo, they are on the same
Same line.
product listing
Yep.
at this point. So they'll share inventory, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
And that's all it does. It doesn't really affect outside marketplaces for the most part. Like no listing data gets changed or anything.
Correct.
But this will
Yep, it will
change
not
it up.
change the SKU on a marketplace. It will not change any of the
Mm-mm.
listing data. It's simply to tell Listing Mirror, hey, this is actually the same thing. So this is a good thing to do when you
Mm-hmm.
add
Yep.
a new selling channel. Hopefully you know what your SKUs are, and if you don't, then make sure that you take the time to go through and to identify which listings might be the same as products that already exist in Listing Mirror. Otherwise, what we do is we just create a brand new product. Um,
Yep.
Second thing is
Yeah.
to check quantities. So when we import from a new channel, there are lots of different ways, lots of different factors in how we decide which quantity to, I guess, save, depending on how things were imported, and
Yep.
lots of different ways that quantity may differ from what you actually have. So I recommend save off a copy of your actual quantity on hand. before you adding your integration. So if you right now your source of truth for inventory is Amazon, and you are a merchant fulfilled seller or an FBM seller, um, save those quantities, and then make sure that they are the same inside of Listing Mirror. So one way that you can do that is we have a template. I know you can't see Matt's dropdown, but there's a template called Quantity Update. Download that, check your quantities. I actually would probably recommend just using VLOOKUP and making sure that the
Yeah.
quantities on in Listing Mirror match
Hmm.
the quantities that you have in whatever your previous inventory source of truth was. For the majority of our sellers, for the majority of our clients, they're using Listing Mirror for their inventory management. So if you're selling anything FBM, anything out of your own warehouse, make sure your quantities in Listing Mirror are correct. The third thing is check your pricing. Make sure that the pricing that you have for each marketplace is how you want it to be, and not just the pricing, but also your pricing settings. So going into the integration settings and making sure that the way that you have the price syncing set up is what you think it is. So there are lots of
Yeah,
different
that's
options
important.
for how you can sync pricing. You need to be clear on how you want to do this and then appropriately mark the settings inside of Listing Mirror. One of the options, like Matt is showing here, is we can import price from Amazon. A lot of our sellers right now
Yep.
have a repricer set up to Amazon. We import the price from Amazon
Pretty
and then
classic.
we sync that price out to the other marketplaces. It's a one-to-one, like it's exactly mapping the price. The other
Yep.
option is you can set up some pricing rules to alter the price a little bit based on the new prices that we have coming in. So there are lots of other options as well, but make sure that you know what your settings are and that you're clear on what they're doing. And the
Yep.
last thing is category
Super
mapping, which we
important.
already talked about. So when you add a new integration, make sure that you take the time to go through and map the categories. We should map most of them for you. We are always mapping categories. We are always adding, sorry, I should say that differently. We're always adding more categories, mapped categories to our, I don't know, lexicon. um, to our
Database.
database. So that you shouldn't have to do a ton of work. But I definitely recommend doing
Mm.
a default category mapping. This might have changed. It used to be like 5 years ago. I would say like setting up a default category was better than nothing. And then I don't know if that is still the truth. Like if you have a wide variety of products, maybe setting up a default isn't super helpful.
Yeah,
But if you sell similar
totally.
things, I would recommend if it's in the clothing category, just set them all to maybe some generic clothing category, and then you can go in and you can alter them, but
Yeah.
at least your listings go live, right? You can always, I think it's worth improving on listings versus like just having to get them live.
Yep.
The more things will sell if the listing is just live than if it's not, clearly. Okay, so those are the things that we recommend. I'm gonna switch over to my slides again
Yes. Let
um,
me stop sharing.
just so I can show you this slide. I know I already talked through this information, but I just want to make sure um, that you guys have, I don't know, it looks different to me than it did. Anyway, okay, so make sure that you guys have this information for you. And then we are going to move into a little bit of Q&A. So if you have questions, I know I see a few here. Please add them. We would love to go through them. So
Let's
let's
see.
just look at Scott's question. He added a little bit of detail here.
Yes.
So you're talking about something specifically that is Amazon based prior to you shipping the product into Amazon. And no, we wouldn't. That is a good question.
Nah.
So you're
Yeah.
asking like,
We do
are
not.
you is there a way for me to, know that this is happening inside of Listing Mirror? Unfortunately not, because we don't do a lot at the moment. I hope we will in the future. I think that we will, but we don't do a lot with or really anything with replenishments. So we don't do anything
Yep.
prior to the product getting to the Amazon warehouse. Listing Mirror doesn't see or doesn't display much of that inside of Listing Mirror. We can get
Nah.
some of the information, and we previously have done more with replenishments, and I do think that we'll get into it. but
Tough.
we don't currently do much with that. So I'm sorry, Scott. I'm sorry to tell you that there isn't a way for you to see that in Listing Mirror. But
Sorry.
that's actually good to know. On the product side, we're always looking for ways that we can be more valuable to you as a seller, specifically for Amazon, because we know Amazon is a super tricky marketplace. Lots of specificities, but like not necessarily a lot of
Oh yeah.
understanding on how to do it right, or a great interface to do it right all the time. Okay, and then Salim asks, if an item is listed on Amazon with a different SKU and ASIN by different sellers, can it be combined? Yes, it can be combined into one item. And the
Mhm.
way that we do this, I actually am working with a seller right now, and we're working specifically on this. So Listing Mirror calls this shadow SKU, basically. So it's just you have the same product on two marketplaces, and you have the same product under two ASINs on Amazon, and you want to indicate to Listing Mirror that it is this actually the same listing. So yes, you can. Let's actually, Matt, can you just show how to set
Mhm.
up a recipe?
Most certainly. Yes. Yes. Share my
This is
screen.
a great question,
This window right here.
and super useful because yeah, I do know that sellers need to do this sometimes.
Yeah, that they do. Yep, our kitting and bundling feature. Well, a little maybe confusing up front. Well, once you see it done, I feel like it's
Mhm.
very straightforward in what to do. So let's remove these initial kits that are already set up. Yes, recipe successfully saved. Excellent. Why is my screen dark? Refresh. Right. So on the inventory tab, when you're looking at your SKUs, there will be a little book icon just to the left. If it's not there, holler at us. That's usually because you're not on a plan that allows for it. It's a higher tier thing. So you could be like on an old legacy plan or something like that. Because I think all of our
New plans, yeah.
non, yeah, new plans
Subscriptions,
have it.
yeah.
Um, Subscriptions, yep. So anyway, let's say I want to do these right here. Ignore that one's large and one's small. Just say they share the same inventory, and it's like this kind of scenario. So what you would do is, assuming it's not like you're not using FBA quantity, like these are your own items. There's a couple different ways to go about it. One of them, so convert to kit. So you need to, hover over that icon, click it, add component. Component SKU. I don't have any right now, but let's just call this red shirt. What did I do? I must have typed that wrong button. Excellent. Add component. Red shirt. And let's just say it's recipe one. Takes one red shirt to fulfill this order. So save, bam. Then I go down to the other one as well. Convert it, add component, red shirt as well. It's the same. You get 1 units per kit. Save, bam. That's all you gotta do. Now these are going to share inventory, so when I update one, it automatically updates the other. As you can see, click save. Bam. So when one sells, the other one will be notified immediately, like within 4 minutes, give or take, when we see the order, that is, from the marketplace. Yeah, and that's simple as that. We have bulk edit templates that allow you to do this as well, like in a much larger scale. So if you have hundreds or thousands of SKUs, I recommend using the template rather
Yeah,
than
for
UI,
sure.
or doing it in the
It is
UI
a
per each
super
one.
useful thing, to have at your disposal. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you need more clarity on how to do it for your specific account, let us know. We would love to help you.
Yeah, yeah. Just let us know,
All right.
please.
So, because of the time, it is 3 o'clock right now.
It's three. It's
Okay,
already
so
three
that just
o'clock.
means we're super
Ridiculous.
passionate about what we're talking about, which is great, and exactly how it should be. So let's just move really quickly through this. If you are not yet using Listing Mirror and you want to use Listing Mirror based on what we talked about today, or anything else that you've got going on in your world that you think Listing Mirror might be helpful with, you can scan this little QR code here to schedule an intro call, or you can also just email me, Erin at listingmirror.com. Super easy, and get in touch to do a simple intro call, or to do just a email exchange. Second thing is, for our existing users, please keep in mind that we do offer technical support, and we want you to get in touch with us if there's anything going on. So support.listingmirror.com is the best place to do that. And we'd love to give you a hand and make sure that the software is working well for you and that your workflows all make sense for what you're trying to accomplish. All right, that's it. We thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for bearing with us as we went over. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye, folks.